in pursuit of improving Indo-Pak relations. The book was formally launched on January 15th of this year and is a compilation of essays written by prominent political leaders, academics, and journalists, both from Pakistan as well as from India. The book was edited by Mr. O.P., Chairman, Center for Peace and Progress, and the book was published by the Center for Peace and Progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gunjan. Thanks, as indicated by Gunjan, that this is the second round. We had the first round on 15th of January, and friends who have participated in the first round, from Pakistan, we had Javed Jabbar Saab, we had Kasuri Saab, Abdul Basit Saab. So this time, we didn't have the privilege of having Mushahid Hussain Saab. So we thought, let's have a second round. And also, there is a desire that we must have once in a month or month and a half such discussions. The idea of this discussion is to create a climate of trust and confidence so that we can discuss things that we are not discussing otherwise. It would be beneficial for each one of us, both for Indians and Pakistanis, if civil society takes greater interest in the affairs of the country, the affairs of the region. We start understanding and appreciating each other's compulsions and limitations and help in creating the climate of trust and confidence. The idea of such meeting is to understand each other's point of view and present one's point of view, try and explore the possibility of better relations. We know that relations between us are not as we want them to be. And we are fortunate that we have today Senator Mushahid Hussain, whose commitment to peace and normalcy is really something worth praising. I wish to invite him to initiate the discussion, and then we will have Dulat Saab from India, and then we will have one after another. Let's be as brief as possible so that we have the benefit of Mushahid Hussain Saab speaking at the end again. He would have the benefit of comments from several of us who belong to various political parties, who have different point of view, and also from Pakistan, we expect some more people. From India, some more people are expected to join. So may I request Mushahid Hussain Saab, a former minister, very eminent journalist, and presently the senator, the Rajya Sabha member, as we call them in India. Mushahid Hussain Saab, please initiate the discussion.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Ofisha, and greetings to all the distinguished ladies and gentlemen who are listening or viewing this webinar. And I would say that this is a very positive initiative launched by my very dear and old friend, Mr. Ofisha, who has been in the vanguard of promoting peace and rapprochement between Pakistan and India for the past several decades that I have known him. And I myself, when I was a journalist before I joined politics, I had taken the initiative 30 years ago of launching the first ever Pakistan-India Track 2, which took place in Islamabad in May, I think 1984. And we had a very good gathering. And then after that, the newspaper I edited, The Muslim, which is a liberal left of center newspaper, similar to the Hindu in India. We had the first time Indian writers writing for Pakistani papers. It was Mr. Kuldeep Nair, Bhavani Sen Gupta Sahib, Pran Chopra Sahib, and others. And I used to write regular syndicated columns for the Times of India, the Hindustan Times, India Today, and the Telegraph. So that media interaction was very much there. And unfortunately, since then, things have actually slipped backwards. That today we have hardly any communication, but for occasional webinars of the kind that we are having today. But I would start on a very positive note that this has been very interesting that after the American military exit and defeat in Afghanistan in August 2021, for the first time, Pakistan has allowed, and I think it's a very positive humanitarian gesture, India to send 50,000 tons of wheat as humanitarian supplies for the beleaguered people in Afghanistan via the overland route through Pakistan. And this has been a decision which is well received between the two countries, well received in Pakistan, and well received in Afghanistan also. So I think that we've come to a good starting point. Secondly, also in Pakistan, we are trying to make a transition of sorts from geopolitics to geoeconomics, because now with the Americans out of this region after 20 years of warfare in which they failed militarily and otherwise, it's important that
we would request everybody who's not speaking to please mute themselves. Thank you. Sorry, sir, please go ahead.
Yes, and it's important that we are talking of regional connectivity, of linking up South Asia with Central Asia, China, Iran, Afghanistan, and I think Pakistan would like to be playing a very key role in that. And from the Pakistani perspective, I'd like to inform our audience in India that it's important to understand that as of now, as of today in Pakistan, with so many issues that we have in the region, within the country, we are very clear that there is no constituency in Pakistan that seeks confrontation with India. And this includes the political forces, this includes the military establishment. And I think we should be very clear on that. And in fact, in the last 7 or 8 elections that we have had in Pakistan in the last 25, 30 years, India has not been a factor in any elections in Pakistan. So that India bashing no longer sells politically to garner votes. Yes, America has been a factor, other countries can be factors, but not India. So I think this also is a sign of confidence which emerged after the nuclear test, where we have a uneasy balance of the deterrence on both sides. And recently, we were talking even I'm chairing the Defense Committee in the Pakistan Senate, and we were having discussions with the military establishment, including the Army Chief General Bajwa, and we were discussing about India relations. And I found that the views of General Bajwa and the views of Mia Nawaz Sharif or the views of President Zardari are quite congruent, quite in congruence with each other, that they feel that the time has come to move on, provided we can discuss issues that are important for both sides. For us, it's of course Kashmir and the issue of interference and so forth. And from India side also, they have issues that at least we should be talking to each other rather than at each other. And it is in this spirit that I also contributed a chapter to the book of Mr. O.P. Shah, which is, I would say, in this bleak atmosphere, when there's a dialogue of the deaf between India and Pakistan, barring the occasional back channel between our two security and intelligence establishments, this is the only interaction that we have among think tanks or media people or opinion leaders. So I think in that spirit, we would like to move forward. Of course, for us, Kashmir remains the paramount issue, which is the impediment in having a normalization of relations, but at least it should not be an impediment for us not to talk to each other or not to at least engage in other areas, whether it's cricket, commerce, or culture, but at least we can keep talking and despite those differences. So I feel that initiatives such as Mr. O.P. Shah's are very important. The region is changing. Pakistan is very clear. Our Prime Minister was last week in Beijing for the Olympics. And next, in 3 weeks, Imran Khan is going to Moscow also on the invitation of President Putin. We feel that regional countries should decide the destiny of this region, not any distant superpower as happened with the United States. And it's good that the US is now out of the region, at least physically they're not present here. And we also are very clear that we reject any notion of a new Cold War, where they target China or Russia, which is sometimes happening through AUKUS or Quad or so forth. And we feel the future is regional connectivity, whether the connectivity can be through TAPI, the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline, or the Iran, Pakistan, India pipeline, or the Belt and Road Initiative, of which the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is the flagship program. But I think the future lies through regional economic connectivity, economy, energy, ports, pipelines, roads, railways, and that's the way forward. And we feel that those hawks in Washington or London or Brussels who seek a new kind of confrontation, creating new enemies, are something which is counterproductive, which goes against the interests of our region. And whether it's Delhi or whether it's Islamabad, I think we should take matters in our own hand and decide issues directly face to face through discussions and or at the regional level. And at least on Afghanistan, we can have, unlike in the past, we don't need a new proxy war. We need to have a better interaction. I think we are all very clear. We want a stable, peaceful, and a united Afghanistan. And it should not be a battleground for any outside powers, and it should not be a source of any exporting of terrorism to any neighboring or any other country for that matter. So I feel the glass is half full. There is an opportunity. We should try to seize the opportunity. Otherwise, I remember when I was a student in Georgetown University in Washington, DC, I heard the very eloquent Israeli former foreign minister, Abba Eban, and he said with a lot of facetiousness and cynicism, he said that the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. So I hope that doesn't apply to Pakistan and India, that we don't miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity, because we have an opportunity in the aftermath of Afghanistan, where the region can decide the future of this region and of Asia on our own without interference from the Western powers. And it is in that spirit Pakistan would be like to take the initiative, and we hope there's reciprocity from the Indian side. Thank you very much, Mr. Opisha. I just made these brief opening remarks, and I hope that this will be a fruitful and productive exercise for both sides to take your initiative forward, which has a lot of resonance within Pakistan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mushahidul, for your very constructive and positive comments. May I welcome Anis Harun. She has also joined us. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Dr. Farooq Abdullah has also joined us. Welcome, Dr. Abdullah. And then
Dr. Abdullah Saab, Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Mushir Hussain Saab has also joined. Thank you very much. May I now request Dr. Abdullah will come later. Our A.S. Dulat Saab, who has written many books, one in collaboration with a Pakistani friend.
Jaran Durrani, yes.
In 4 or 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Shah Saab. Thank you very much.
Eminent lawyer Ashok Bhan.
I must congratulate you for this very bold initiative. I think possibly you come nearest to our friend Mani Shankar Iyer Saab's mantra of uninterrupted and uninterruptible dialogue and engagement. And I think more and more strength to you, and I can say we are all with you. Mushahid Saab, that was a very positive introduction. Thank you very much. And a very warm hello to everybody, and particularly our Pakistani friends. I was very happy to hear from Mushahid Saab that there is not any constituency in Pakistan which does not favor good relations with India. Unfortunately, there is too much distrust, And my request is that in a forum like this, when we are meeting like this, we should try and put aside our differences, or at least adjourn them for the time being. Mushahid Saab said that Kashmir is paramount to Pakistan. So even though it's the most weather-beaten subject, I'll not skirt the issue. It's my favorite subject. And I will start with Kashmir. Let me say that the only word of caution is that let us get real. Let's be realistic about what is happening and what has happened. And I go back 20 years ago when we were speaking to the Hurriyat, and Pakistan at that time was talking of self-determination for Kashmir. And the separatists said that this can't be real. Pakistan can't be serious. So I think we need to get serious. Now, a lot has happened in the last 20 years. A lot of water has flown down the Jhelum. 370 has gone. And I can tell you, Dr. Farooq is here, and I don't think he will disagree with me that the Kashmiris have been anticipating this for some time. The Kashmiri anticipates things very well. He adjusts to things very well. He reconciles to things very well. And this had long been on the cards. And when the Kashmiris started reconciling to the abrogation, the thought which struck me was what General Musharraf used to say, that whatever is acceptable to Kashmir, Kashmiri should be acceptable to Pakistan. And something very similar used to also be said by Sardar Qayyum, that whatever can save Kashmir and Kashmiris is what we should try and do. So I thought to myself that if the Kashmiri can reconcile to the abrogation, then Pakistan should not have any problem. And then, lo and behold, about a year ago, to be exact, the 25th of February last year, we had a ceasefire, which I thought was a very positive development. And my own feeling, because I'm an optimist, I thought it should open a lot of doors. But those doors are still stuck. And we are where we were. What I had heard from across at that point of time was that, okay, Pakistan will accept the abrogation of 370. But there should be we should be assured, the Kashmiri should be assured there will be no demographic change and statehood should be restored to Kashmir. Now, Government of India is committed to restoration of statehood. On the question of demographic change, I think it would be foolhardy to go into that exercise. So I think if we understand the realities of Kashmir, I think we can understand each other better. Because Kashmir is important. And I would agree with Mushaid Saab, it is paramount. The next subject which comes up every now and then for discussion, I don't want to skirt it again, is terrorism. And let me say that terrorism is almost over in Kashmir. But terrorism is not going to go away either from Pakistan or from India unless we start working on it together, unless we start cooperating. And let me mention here that for about 5 to 7 years, we used to have what was called a spooks dialogue, a dialogue of retired intelligence officers. And I would like to tell you, I'd like to say that not one single person opposed this idea of intelligence cooperation. And everybody agreed that this is something that needs to be institutionalized. Again, nothing has happened. Now, my point is that even if in the worst days of the Cold War, the CIA and the KGB could talk to each other, could cooperate with each other. A lot of people believe that that saved the world from destruction. Then why can't India and Pakistan work together? Finally, because I don't want to take too much time, is that if the way ahead has to be different, it has to be out of the box, like Dr. Manmohan Singh used to say. And I would say to both our friends in Pakistan and also the more imaginative on our side, because imagination is very important, that we need to find, or we need to devise a way to get Imran Khan to Delhi. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ashok Bhan.
Yes.
Lawyer and activist. Mr. Bhan, please.
Yes.
And you will be followed by Anish Haroon from Karachi.
Thank you, Mr. Shah. the level of discussion today has become very serious by the intervention of our friend from Pakistan and also by Mr. Dulat. And I wish to say one thing, that it is a very serious issue. And the relations which have been very bitter since the inception have to be straightened. And I was really impressed by what Mr. Dulat said and what Mr. Mushahid said. And I would say that when I hold your book in hand, if 50 of the men of consequence of civil society almost have written in this. And they have also put the level of discussion to a higher and serious pedestal. And the only commonality in the common thread in all the contributions in this book have been for looking for peace between the countries. And that peace,
आपके यहाँ नजर देने आ जाऊंगा कोई 5:30 बजे जी हाँ आधा
and that peace in the region is important for the people of region, not for the establishments of both the countries. It is for the people's welfare that peace is very important in this region, and particularly the Kashmir and Kashmiris. Kashmiris have suffered enormously and colossally in this proxy war and in the wars earlier also. And Kashmiris say that enough is enough. Let both establishments of Pakistan and India sit together and sort out whatever the contentious issues are. In India, we say that Kashmir is not compromisable. And in Pakistan, they say it's our jugular vein, we have to discuss it, as Mushahid Saab said also. But I was encouraged recently by national security policy, which was just recently enunciated by Pakistan. And Pakistan has put economic priority far ahead than the political priority. And they have, in the secret realm, whatever is in the public domain, one could make out that Kashmir has been put to a back burner for the time being. And there is a provision that we'll have at least 100 years of peace with India. That's a very encouraging sign. The hawks in both the countries are saying that the opposition was not consulted, the civil society was not consulted. For such policy issues, I don't think opposition has a very major role or the civil society has a very major role. It is for the Pakistan establishment, whatever method they have used to come out with a policy, which is a welcome policy for the time being with India. And Indian establishment has also said that we welcome it with certain caveats. Those caveats have to be, which might be forming the secret part of the national security policy in Pakistan, that will get revealed by and by. But the fact remains that the most contentious issues from geopolitical point of view have been put at this back burner. And now the geo-economic issues have the front priority for both the countries. Thank you. I will once again say that it's a very serious issue. And this national security policy of Pakistan has come up as a new policy frame, policy guideline. And India has also adopted part of it, welcomed part of it. And your holding such seminars at a serious level will help it. And mind you, one thing, last word I want to say, that these efforts of ceasefire, of policy shift, they do not come without the homework of both the countries. there must be some back channel working, very seriously working in order to, I think, make peace with each other. That's my last point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anish Harunji, and
Ji,
an activist. She has been to India many times. She was part of a very major initiative. She has written an extremely interesting article. Next 5 minutes for you, and then Sunil and Muzaffar Shah. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Opisha. I must congratulate you for initiating this dialogue when in fact there was all the channels were quiet and nothing was going on. So I think you have done a great job by opening this channel for the activists of both the countries and for publishing such a great book, which I'm sure that I'll get in few days as you have promised.
It's already in Islamabad. In fact, you should have got it by today, but the person
Okay.
to deliver his mother is seriously ill.
Oh, I'm so sorry to know
Books
that.
are in Islamabad. They should
Okay.
have been with you yesterday.
Okay, maybe in few days, and I pray that his mother gets all right, and I do get the book, and I'll let you know when I get it. As far as this serious discussion is concerned, for me, it has always been a serious issue. Not only the issue of Kashmir, but also the relations between India and Pakistan. Because I think that the peace in the whole of South Asia depends on the terms which India and Pakistan have with each other. And we have realized, we have seen that we have fought so many wars which have been very useless wars. Even the victors don't get anything out of it. Maybe a temporary sense of victory or defeating the other. But in fact, it all has to be done, and whatever we have achieved is on a discussion table. Kashmir for me is not only an issue between India and Pakistan, it is for the Kashmiris to decide their fate, and we stand with them when they ask for abrogation and they want their statehood to be restored. We fully support it. And for me, it's a humanitarian issue. So many people, their lives, their inspiration, their stakes are involved in it. And it is not just an issue between India and Pakistan. Definitely, we must stand with them in resolution of this issue. But at the same time, why can't India and Pakistan officially open the dialogue, sit on a table and sort out many other issues which are hanging in the air? I think that this is very important that Pakistan has come out with a national security policy. It would have been better if the opposition and the civil society would have been consulted in it. It should have always been a consultative process. But in spite of that, I think that it is a positive step, and India has also welcomed it. So the time is ripe that both the governments, I mean the civilian governments, should start looking for a dialogue. Either Imran Khan visits India or Indian side visits Pakistan, but we need to start a peaceful discussion and dialogue for the resolution of the issue. Because if good relations prevail between Pakistan and India, it is useful, it is peaceful for millions of people living in both the countries. If we open our borders for trade, we will benefit, each other's countries will benefit. I don't know how much smuggling is taking place. We all know that, and we are losing the money to the smugglers, and the governments are not getting any benefit of it. And the people, at the advantages of the peace should be given to the people, and we should make sure that it reaches to the lowest level, to the poorest of poor, to the poorest of the population in both the countries. So I have always been a part of Pak India People's Forum for Peace and Democracy since its inception. And I think the efforts need to be revitalized, reopened, and the channel, official, unofficial, as many as channels as possible, whether it is the cooperation between the intelligence agencies or the coordination and dialogue between the civil society or any other forces that be. Once we had decided that we will give easy access in visa to the senior people, especially the journalists and those who have crossed 60 years, they can. I tell you, as an activist who have been to India many times and who was born in Hyderabad, Deccan, that it makes so much difference if people can go physically and meet people on the other side and experience for themselves that how much common things we have between each other. I want to narrate a small story. Once when I took my daughter to India when she was only 10 years old, when we reached Bombay, it's a very small flight, from 1.5 hours or so from Karachi to Bombay. She told me, how come we have reached the other country so fast? Are you sure? I said, yes, it's Bombay. It's part of India. It's an Indian city. So when we landed, she looked around and she said, but the people are not different. They are like the people in our country and they speak the same language. So how come we are two different countries? You see? So that was the impression of a child who was 10 years old. So it is unfortunate that we have been kept apart on one pretext or the other. Why can't we get travelers' visas? Why can't we go for sightseeing? Why can't we go to meet our relatives? I've lost my own relatives during this COVID, and my dearest Khala in Hyderabad, Deccan. But I couldn't go. And that was the most unfortunate thing for the people of this country. Look at Europe, they have sorted out their issues. Then why can't we sort out our own issues? And I'm sure that the better relations between India and Pakistan and making the visa regime easier and accessible to people will definitely help resolve the Kashmir issue in a better manner. So we should not only focus, I don't mean to put the Kashmir issue on the back burner, but what I'm saying that we do have very important relationships to be built between the people of India and Pakistan, and both countries, and I'm sure that the people who are for peace in both countries stand with the Kashmiris for their statehood or for their right of self-determination or choosing in whatever state or in whatever conditions they want to live. It is not for us to choose. It is for them to decide what they want. So, I mean, none of the side of the Kashmir, which is either with India and Pakistan, are the property of Indian government or the Pakistani government. People have their own right to choose their own statehood and decide that how do they want to live in future as an independent state, as a state of Kashmir, or do they want to be part of Pakistan or India? Some of them maybe. Then they should decide. It's not for us to decide. Having said this, I still feel that it is very important, friends, that we put pressure on our government to start the dialogue on the official level, and also for the organizations like PIPFPD to open a channel when we used to have conventions, why can't we travel to each other's countries and talk about peace, talk about good relations, talk about betterment of a society, talk about the economic empowerment, which is so important for the people of both the countries. It's not an issue only for Pakistan, but I'm glad that Pakistani establishment or Pakistani government has recognized and realized that, and hope that the Indian government should also realize that more than Hindutva, what is important is the economic empowerment of the people of India, and we sit together and have a useful dialogue and open as many channels as possible. Thank you very much.
Very much. Muzaffar Shah from Srinagar.
Thank
Next
you.
4 minutes are yours, Muzaffar Shah, please.
Thank you, Shah Sahab. I'll be very brief because a lot of people have to speak. Dr. Abdullah is there, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. We heard with rapt attention all the speakers before this, Mushahid Saab, Dulat Saab, and Anis Harunji. I can only say a couple of things. Is that it is very heartening to hear from Mushahid Saab that though Kashmir remains a paramount issue, but they can move forward, and Delhi and Islamabad have to take things in their own hands. And we have to be very constructive and positive about things. And also linking South Asia with Central Asia, we are somewhere in between, and we'll benefit the most apart from both the countries, India and Pakistan. Kashmir will also benefit a lot by that. And I wish that happens during our lifetimes. Also, our very respected and dear friend, Mr. Dulat, sir, I agree to everything what you have said. Each and every point that you said about ceasefire, about assuring Kashmiris of no change of democracy, demography, terrorism is almost gone in Kashmir, whatever you said. But one thing which I will not agree is that Kashmiris will part way with 370. That's not possible. 370 is a constitutional guarantee given by the forefathers of modern India to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And we will have to sit down and work on it. And it is a subject which is today before the Honorable Supreme Court of India. It is under the consideration of the Honorable Court. And I'm sure the Honorable Supreme Court will uphold the sanctity of the Constitution, and it will give justice to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, because 370 is not only Kashmir centric. 370 is for every Kashmiri Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, Isai, Bodh, Kashmiri Pandit, Gujar, Bakarwal, Pahadi, whosoever it be. And I respect your views, sir, Dulat Saab, but Kashmiris will never reconcile to the fact that 370 will be abrogated, because 370 मेरी पहचान और मेरी आन और मेरी शान है, और हम चाहते हैं कि हुकूमत हिंद और हुकूमत पाकिस्तान, that we become the bridge of friendship, as used to be told by Sher Kashmir Sheikh Mohammad Abdullah. That has to be it is a guarantee given to us. That guarantee cannot be just taken away just like that, sir. Rest, all is fine. And as far as Okban also made very good comments about, and we are talking about the national security policy of Pakistan that has come forward. And I'm sure both the intelligence agencies, like Dulat Saab said, the officers meet. Hope they meet more often, and they can put in their good offices and see that we can come out of this. We are trying in KGD, which Dr. Saab heads, we are trying for a same kind of a situation, peace between India and Pakistan, and a peaceful resolution of Kashmir issue, acceptable to both India, Pakistan, and paramount importance to the people of Jammu, Kashmir, and Ladakh on both sides of the line of control. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sunil. Mr. Sunil Vatal from Kashmir again.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible, Shah Sahab? Okay. So First of all, thanks a lot, Mr. Opisha, for inviting me to the session, and the initiative that's been taken is really praiseworthy initiative, and I think it's going in the right direction. And I just wanted to speak a couple of words about the
Please, someone is
okay.
speaking.
Okay. So I just wanted to, I think somebody is speaking.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think what we'll do is we'll put everybody on mute, and then I'll unmute you because it's hard to tell where the sound is coming from.
That's better.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you, Shah Sahab. So
Yeah.
when I started compiling my article for this book, one of the things that that came to my mind was that the narrative that we have. I meet a lot of friends in other cities of India here, and when we meet friends, they have a different. Everybody has a different view about Kashmir, and we all know, in order to uh, talk about peace between India and Pakistan, the prime concern happens to be Kashmir. So when we look at Kashmir, the narratives are different. And what I did was I wanted to put the narrative straight, just give a brief background in my article. And I thought more than anything else, we owe it to our next generation. The next generation has no visibility about what is happening, what is the background, why is it happening. So having said that, I think it's imperative that we bring in the peace initiatives, we carry the peace initiatives to the next level. And as was pointed out earlier, the national security policy by Pakistan is a welcome step. I think India needs to also reciprocate on similar lines. While they have welcomed the national security policy, we need to look at similar lines. We need to look at similar similar initiatives from this end also. And it is important that the peace happens. It is going to happen. It's basically essential for the common person. And while we are looking at all these initiatives, I think we need to talk about the common person. We need to look at where we are driving the common person. Is it benefiting? I mean, a lot of stuff has been said about Article 370. Post Article 370, there's a lot of from the government side. There's a lot of publicity, a lot of initiatives are being taken. But how far are those initiatives touching the common man? Is the common man getting benefited or not? Just doing a tourism festival, just doing a festival here and there, just creating a smart city and putting 4 paintings or hoardings, is it really going to help? Does it help the common person? That is what we need to look at. And that's why I had mentioned that people engagement is paramount. We need to talk about people engagement, and we need to see initiative where people from both sides of the LOC can be involved, can be engaged. Having said that, another point which I would want to touch again is I would strongly, adding to what my predecessor, Mr. Muzaffar Shah, said a little while back, the question about how Kashmir is reconciled to Article 370 abrogation or not, that's something which we need to think about. But the statement, with all due respect to Mr. Dolan, the statement that Kashmir is reconciled to things easily, we should not take, does it mean that Kashmiris need to be taken for granted? No. Reconciliation is good. If this is the image that we reconcile to things very easily, we should not be taken for granted. I think it needs more of deliberation, it needs more of policy making, decision making, and more of people involvement. So again, it is the people involvement which is important. And having said that, I think what we need at this point of time is this initiative needs to be taken forward by creating more and more awareness and Mr. O.P. Shah has done a fabulous, fantastic job, and we need to now take it to the next step. We need to look at taking these initiatives to next level by getting more and more engagement from the civil society. Thank you very much. Over to you.
We now request Mushir Hussain Saab to offer his comments. He will be followed by Ashwini.
But maybe one of these years we meet in London.
Thank you, Shah Saab. This has been a very helpful dialogue that has gone on now for 3 consecutive meetings.
God bless you.
I'm grateful for your participation, for your inviting and inviting us, and particularly to Neem Tree, which is a UK-based think tank, and we are of Pakistan origin and has stayed connected to Pakistan in that respect. I have already written an article. All I would like to say is comments on what has already been said, because I think that is how it becomes more interesting. I think it is certainly, as Ashok Bansab said, it is, and Dr. Anis Haroon has mentioned, it is a really serious issue and always has been a serious issue. But the important thing I heard was the constituency that Mr. Mujahid spoke of. There is, as he rightly said, no constituency now in Pakistan that wants a war with India or wants disharmony with India. There is a peace option in Pakistan. And this reflected, as he said, in consecutive elections, all 5 elections, there has not been an anti-India wave or motion, as has been in the past, I have to say. But this is not the case, I have to say, in India. So I think perhaps one of the things that helps, and I go back to the original discussion, as was last time, on the 4-point formula, which has been arrived with consensus over many meetings that people have been part of, is the fact that, to build such a consensus, we have to have an atmosphere in the public mind. Public mood has to be consistent with that. And one of the things that is important is the political discourse. So in elections, we do not have the discourse of an anti-Pakistan or anti-India. It helps because it allows people to look through that and think of the 2 nations as not enemies of each other. So that's the first point I would like to make. And the second point is about the will of the Kashmiris. I think this has been discussed, and not just Muzaffar Shah Sahab, balki Mr. Wattles and others have emphasized that the will of the Kashmiris is paramount. And Sardar Qayyum, he had said that whatever Kashmiri decides, Pakistan will accept. And this has always been the notion of Pakistan, that we would accept the will of the Kashmiri people, whatever they decide. So I think I would not go into changes that has happened now to the status of Kashmir, but it is something that the Kashmiri people and India have to think of. And of course, we have an interest in this because Kashmir is for us a disputed territory still, one that is not settled, and we need to settle that. The other notion I would like to just talk about is the policy that Pakistan has come up with, the national policy on security, and the Kashmiri discussion in that. And so it'd be useful to see the thinking in Pakistan now. Pakistan is not the Pakistan of 50 years ago, or 40 years ago, or even 20 years ago. There has been changes. And for some of us who have grown up in Pakistan and have my first experience of meeting an Indian was when I came to England and started working in a hospital. And I met somebody, Ashok Prabhu, who's still a friend of mine. And this is my first instance, and the amazement that, there's absolutely no difference between us, and we could chat away and have a absolutely acceptable friendship. So it is unnatural, this state between India and Pakistan. And as Mr. Dolat said, the idea of starting a dialogue with intelligence service, I think that's really the first thing we should look at. We should look at the public mood and discourse, and then look to the 4 points that have helped us form a sort of a starting point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ashwini Chirungu from Kashmir. Please, Sanjit ji.
Thank you very much to all of you. I am today for the first time so enthused with the discussion that has been held, particularly because what Anis Harun said some 15 minutes or 20 minutes earlier. She virtually created an emotional chord that has a historical background and that touches all of us. She rightly said, we may be two peoples, but the fact of the matter is we look alike. We may have two nations, but the fact of the matter is we have the same language. She also said that her daughter was amazed to see when she reached Mumbai, the people say as same as they were in Pakistan. It has a historical background because we are from a common civilizational flow. We have a common bondings. We have a common history. We have a common culture. Only 100 years before, we were a common family. We were one family. And now, after 100 years, we are living as two enemies facing each other. So, from a common family, the distance is from a common family, from one family to two nations. They are opposed to each other as two enemies. I believe it is too much. It is really too much. It is useless to talk in terms of having good relations between two nations when we are talking of India and Pakistan. It is basically having good relations among the family members of a common family. It is the relations between two brothers. Only some years back, some of us talked in terms of fighting with each other for 100 years, for 1,000 years, giving the others 1,000 cuts. And the same country today is talking in terms of having good relations with India for the next 100 years. That is the change. It is not only a change in the administrative or the political setup of a particular country. It speaks of a historical shift from a position where it could think that whatever it thought about India was good and was everlasting. The fact of the matter is it was not good, it was not everlasting. And the changes are right before us. It has given a hope. I am also assured of this, that the new security policy that has been enunciated by Pakistan has also a very deep-rooted thinking and consciousness in it when it is talking of 100 years relationship, great relationship, good relationship with India. It is a welcome move, definitely, and we must, at this point of time, get convinced that Pakistan and India have no two options. They have only one option, and that is to sit together, talk together. But the fact of the matter is that over the last 30 years, we have been engulfed by a demon that is known as terrorism. Everybody knows where from this terrorism comes. Everybody knows who is responsible for this terrorism. And everybody knows whose guns were given to the terrorists to create mayhem, destruction, and death in Jammu and Kashmir. I need not to comment upon that because everybody knows. It is the time. Like Pakistan thought in terms of 100 years good relationship with India. Let us shun terrorism. Let Pakistan disassociate itself from terrorism. Let it realize the dreams that it gave to the world, that its land will not be used for terrorism henceforth. And let Pakistan also realize one fact, which I believe it will, that we have a common history and many things are there that we need to have a research because we have a common history. We need to have research and development because we have a common civilization. And then one thing I would like to add that gives me a hope for future. And that is, kindly do not view the relationship between India and Pakistan from a commerce point of view, from an economic point of view. India can live without Pakistan economically. Pakistan can live without India economically. But what is important? In fact, the kind of civilization, the kind of relationship we had, we should have common friends and common friends. But that did not happen because we went too far to make it sure that we can exist without each other. The fact of the matter is, howsoever we may become strong in our strength, but we will have to live together because that is not only historically true, that is politically true, and that is territorially true. So it is the best time that we take forward what Mushahid Sahab, what Mushir Sahab said. I really appreciate the way they have fine-tuned their aspirations while they were talking. I am really impressed. And these things have been discussed at various important levels. And we are appreciative of the change that has taken place in Pakistan. Definitely, this change should lead all of us to a new horizon and to a new vision of commonality, to a new vision of brotherhood. But let us, for the sake of God, not think in terms of that we are settling scores between the two nations or between the two neighbors. We are one family. We are two brothers living in two rooms of one single house. And this house is as old as 10,000 years. So with this, I believe, let this an initiative to talk to each other be taken to the next level. I am also very happy that more important people are taking part in this discussion. Like I am seeing Mr. Dulat, I am seeing Dr. Farooq Abdullah Saab, then Zafar Shah Saab. They are very important people so far as J&K is concerned. Then Ashok Banji. It is wonderful to have some very important people from Jammu and Kashmir to be a part of this discussion. This gives a hope that what has been initiated by Mr. O.P. Shah will not get aborted in between. We will reach our destinations successfully and truthfully. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ashwini ji. Ashwini ji, incidentally, is the spokesperson of the ruling party at the center. Amia Kilara, would you like to offer any comment now? Amia? Anybody else who would like to speak? I invite Professor Farooq Abdullah Saab to offer his comments.
Yes.
Yeah.
O.P. Shah साहब, मैं आपको मुबारक करता हूं. आप कई सालों से कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि कश्मीर में भी हालात अच्छे हों और हिंदुस्तान और पाकिस्तान के दरमियान भी हालात अच्छे हों. अफसोस तो इस बात का है कि नफरतों ने हमें घेर रखा. और कुछ हमारी किस्मत भी कुछ अजीब है. जब भी कहीं ना कहीं मसला हल होने की हालत होती है जैसे 64 में जवाहरलाल नेहरू ने एक कोशिश की थी और फील्ड मार्शल अयूब खान के साथ मेरे वालिद की बातचीत भी हुई थी और एक मुलाकात होने वाली थी और उस मुलाकात में हम ये उम्मीद करते थे कि आगे बढ़ेंगे, मगर जवाहरलाल जी की मौत हो गई। जब भी कश्मीर के मामले पे कोई भी हम आगे चलते हैं तो कोई ना कोई मुश्किल आ जाती है। हमारे वजीर आजम ताशकंद में मर गए, उसके बाद जब वाजपेयी जी ने शुरू किया तो मुशर्रफ साहब को मुसीबतें उठानी पड़ी पाकिस्तान में, और वो सारा वो जो 4 पॉइंट प्लान वगैरह था वो वैसे ही रह गया। फिर मनमोहन सिंह जी आए, वो भी बातचीत वैसे ही रह गई। पता नहीं अल्लाह को क्या मंजूर है, मैं जानता नहीं हूँ कि अल्लाह क्या चाहता है। हम सब यहाँ जो बैठे हुए हैं, जो सुन रहे हैं, चाहते हैं कि अमन आए। अमन कैसे आएगा? क्योंकि नफरतों पे तो इलेक्शन जीते जाते हैं, नफरत बढ़ाई जाती है, हमारे वतन में नफरत बढ़ाई जा रही है और इसका खमियाजा हम सब ने उठाना पड़ता है। और जब तक पाकिस्तान और हिंदुस्तान की ईमानदारी से उस हद तक नहीं पहुंचे कि हम ये नफरतें छोड़ के बातचीत पे आए और कोई रास्ता निकालने की कोशिश करें, तो अल्लाह ही जानता है हम लोगों का हाल क्या होगा। गरीबी, बदहाली, बीमारी, कीमतें आसमान पे चढ़ रही हैं दोनों मुल्कों में। गरीब से हो रहा है, अमीर आसमान पे चढ़ रहा है। एक दिन आएगा, मुझे डर लगता है ये कहने को, कि यहाँ खुदा ना खास्ता कभी ऐसा ना हो कि फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन आ जाए दोनों मुल्कों में और गरीब उठ के सबको खत्म कर दे। अगर हमने सचमुच इन मामलों का हल करना है तो पहले हमने अपने दिल साफ करने हैं। जब तक हम दिल साफ नहीं करेंगे, बातें कुछ नहीं करेंगे, कुछ नहीं होगा। मुझे खुशी है, चंगू साहब ने भी बहुत अच्छा बोला, सब ने, हमारे दोस्त पाकिस्तान से जिन्होंने बोला, बहुत अच्छी शुरुआत हुई। मगर कैसे ये आगे चले जब तक दोनों मुल्कों की हुकूमत ये ना समझे कि इसके बगैर कोई रास्ता नहीं है। आप देखिए दोनों मुल्क कितना खर्चा रहे हैं डिफेंस में, खरबों रुपए, और गुर्बत आसमान से बात कर रहे हैं। कब ये, अब देखिए आज विलायत की फौज देखिए क्या है, कुछ भी नहीं। आज भी यूक्रेन का मामला है तो अमेरिका वहां से कह रहा है कि हम करेंगे, और जबकि यूरोपियन ममालिक के जानते हैं कि उनकी बर्बादी आएगी और वो दौड़ रहे हैं कि किसी तरीके से ये मामला हल हो। अल्लाह ने जात दे, हमारे यहाँ भी अगर ये हुआ जो 70 साल में 75 साल में हम लोगों ने कोई तरक्की की है, वो फौरन उड़ जाएगी, खत्म हो जाएगी। आज तो दोनों इतने ताकतवर हो गए हैं कि अल्लाह ही जानता है। तो इसलिए मुझे खुशी है कि आप लोग सब चाहते हैं कि अमन आए। दौलत साहब ने भी बहुत अच्छा कहा, मगर दौलत साहब की एक बात में बिल्कुल नहीं मानता कि 370 खत्म हो गया और हम लोगों ने कबूल कर लिया। नहीं, वो तो पुलिस और फौज और जो जब कुछ लगाया था यहाँ पे इन्होंने। मैं खुद जब वजीर आजम से मिला तो मैंने उनसे पूछा इससे पहले कि ये जो फौज जा रही है वहां कश्मीर, ये क्या आपने जंग कर ली है पाकिस्तान से या चीन से, क्या हो रहा है? और फिर मालूम हुआ अगले दिन कि 370 खत्म हो गया, 35 से खत्म कर दिया और बस खत्म हो गया। और ये समझते हैं कि हम लोगों ने कबूल कर लिया। हम कबूल करने वाले नहीं हैं जनाब। हम चाहते हैं कि ये अमन आए, हम चाहते हैं कि मुल्क में बेहतरी आए, हम चाहते हैं कि हम तरक्की करें। हमारे यहाँ भी बच्चे बेकार पड़े हुए हैं, पढ़े लिखे हैं, बेकार है, हर तरफ से बेचैनी है, गरीबी बढ़ रही है और इसमें कोई शक नहीं है। इस गरीबी को दूर करेंगे तब जबकि हमारे दोनों मुल्कों के ये मुसीबतें दूर हो जाएंगी। हम समझते हैं कि इसका एक ही रास्ता है कि बातचीत का रास्ता है, मगर बातचीत करें तो किसी मामले में तो पहुंचे, किसी हद तक तो पहुंचे। आगरा में भी बातचीत हुई और हम समझते थे कि ईमानदारी से कि वो, क्योंकि अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी उस जमात से थे जो कबूल नहीं करेगी, मगर अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी ने मुंह करने की कोशिश की, आगे चलने की कोशिश की हम उम्मीद करते हैं कि ये जो आज भी हुकूमत कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे, कि वो भी इसकी तरफ चलेंगे और रास्ता निकालने की कोशिश करेंगे। कब तक हम लोग झगड़े में पड़ते रहेंगे? कब तक हम लोग एक दूसरे के साथ नफरत करते रहेंगे? सही बात है, ट्रेड भी चलेगा, बाकी चीजें भी चलेंगी, मगर नफरतों को दूर करना है तो दोनों के मुश्किलात को दूर करने के लिए पहल करनी है, हुकूमत को पहल करनी है। और उसमें जहां हिंदुस्तान और पाकिस्तान है, वहां जम्मू कश्मीर के लोग भी हैं, इनसे भी आपने बात करनी है, इनके दिल को भी जीतना पड़ेगा। ये नहीं समझना कि हम लोग ताकत से इनको दबा सकेंगे। फिरौन भी बहुत ताकत से दबा रहा था बनी इसराइलियों को। अल्लाह ने वो तूफान लाया कि बनी इसराइल बच गए, मूसा ले गया और सारे मिट गए बाकी से। ये मत समझिए कि ताकत हम हैं, ताकत अल्लाह है। अल्लाह के बगैर कोई ताकत नहीं, और वो है जो मालिक है सारे जहानों का। इससे आपसे भी कहूँगा कि मेहरबानी करके अपना इन्फ्लुएंस इस्तेमाल कीजिए, चरंगू से अफसर, क्योंकि ये एक बड़ी जमात के सदर है, कि मेहरबानी करके इस तरफ चलिए कि हम लोग बर्बादी से बच जाएं, मुसीबत से बच जाएं और हमारे बच्चे कहीं आगे चले, तरक्की करें। आज हम देखते हैं सिर्फ जंग का माहौल बनाया जा रहा है। कैसे चलेगा ये अच्छी बात है कि आप लोगों ने एक नेशनल पॉलिसी लाई है, मगर पॉलिसी नहीं चलती है, कागज पे जो है वो नहीं चलता है। याद है आपको जब हिटलर से मिलने गया चेम्बरलेन, और जब उतरा वापस स्कॉटलैंड में कागज लेके कि हियर इज द पीस, और फिर हिटलर ने क्या किया? हिटलर ने वो कागज उठाया, उसको ऐसे फाड़ा, दिस इज चेम्बरलेन्स पीस। से अल्लाह के वास्ते ये हिस्ट्री को कभी भूलिए मत। तारीख में ऐसे बड़े मामले आए हैं और इन तारीख को याद रखना चाहिए। और अगर मैं अशोक बान साहब को भी मुबारक करता हूँ कि वो भी बहुत सारे बीमार थे, उनको कोविड हो गया था, और आज उनको देख के मुझे खुशी है कि वो सेहतयाब है। अल्लाह इनको भी सलामत है, क्योंकि ये भी कोशिश कर रहे हैं किसी न किसी तरीके से हल हो। और दुलत तो पुराने इसमें पापी हैं जिन्होंने जनाब कितनी कोशिशें नहीं की हैं, वो ट्रैक 1 हो, ट्रैक 2 हो, जिनमें इन्होंने काम किया कि किसी तरीके से हम चले। और शाह साहब, मैं आपको मुबारक करता हूँ, बहुत अच्छा किया आपने कि आप इन मुश्किलों वक्तों में भी आप कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि हम लोग आगे बढ़ें हिंदुस्तान पर। मैं तो खुद ये वो दिन देखना चाहता हूँ मरने से पहले कि मैं वाघा से गाड़ी चलाऊं नहीं, मैं अपने इलाके से, जम्मू से, श्रीनगर से, मुजफ्फराबाद से होते हुए मैं सारे पाकिस्तान को देख सकूं, जा सकूं, दोस्तों से मिल सकूं। मेरे अपने ग्रैंडफादर लाहौर में दफन है, मेरे अंकल वहां दफन है, मैं वहां पे फातिहा पढ़ना चाहता हूँ। जैसे अभी इनने फरमाया हारून ने कि वो नहीं जा सकी हैदराबाद क्योंकि मुश्किलात है। इन मुश्किलात को दूर करना पड़ेगा। Unless we have people to people engagement, unless we have open borders that people can go and meet each other, नफरतें दूर नहीं होंगी। अगर हमने इन नफरतों को दूर करना है तो हमने इन बॉर्डर्स को खत्म करना है, इन नफरतों के दीवानों को तोड़ देना है। जैसे बर्लिन वॉल गिर गई और दो जो अलग थे इकट्ठे हो गए और तरक्की पर चल रहे। आज पाकिस्तान और हिंदुस्तान को भी, अगर कि वो एक मुल्क है, हम मानते हैं ये वो मुल्क है और है मुल्क, और हम चाहते हैं कि वो भी तरक्की करे, आगे बढ़े, और हम भी आगे बढ़े कि हम आगे चल के कोई रास्ता निकाल सके। आपका पानी सब मेरी रियासत से आता है, सारे दरिया मेरी तरफ से आपके यहाँ आते हैं, मेजर दरिया है, तो इनका भी हमें सोचना है कि आप लोगों को वो मुश्किलात नहीं होनी चाहिए, हम जानते हैं, मगर इनको साला करना बहुत जरूरी है। और मैं समझता हूँ अल्लाह से मांगे कि अल्लाह ताला हमारी इन कोशिशों को कामयाब करे और हम सचमुच एक दोस्ती का माहौल पैदा कर सके इन दो बड़े न्यूक्लियर वेपन पावर के मुल्कों से, लोग एक दूसरे से मिल सके, भाईचारे में रह सके। अल्लाह करे कि मरने से पहले मेरे वालिद वो देख नहीं सके कि मैं देख सकूं कि हम लोग दोनों मुल्क जो हैं अमन से रह रहे हैं और जम्मू कश्मीर में भी अमन आए और हम लोग एक अच्छी जिंदगी बसर कर सके। ओपी शाह साहब, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका।
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah. Friends, anyone else would like to offer any comment? Is Mr.
OP Shah sahab.
Shankar here? Mani Shankar Iyer sahab? Yes. We have a friend from Pakistan, Karachi. He wants to offer his comments.
Next. OP Shah sahab, मैं भी बोलना चाहता हूँ.
बोलिए.
डॉक्टर सुनीलम.
ये पाकिस्तान के दोस्त.
पहले आप बोल रहे हैं.
Dr. Sunilam. Yes, please.
You want me? Hassanullah?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
3 minutes for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shah. लोगों ने, I have heard Abdullah Saab, I have heard Dalit Saab, I have heard Mushir Hussain, Muzaffar Hussain, and so veteran people, and from Pakistan also different. खास तौर से मुशाहिद हुसैन को भी सुना, मगर मेरा कहना यह है कि हम गुज़िश्ता 75 साल से अपने मुशाहिदात तो बयान कर रहे हैं, इरशाद तो कर रहे हैं, मगर एक पॉलिटिकल विल, मैं पॉलिटिकल कहूँगा, मैं कोई ब्यूरोक्रेटिक या मिलिट्री विल की बात नहीं कर रहा, मैं पॉलिटिकल विल की बात कर रहा हूँ कि until and unless there is a political will between the two countries, things will not change. हमें सोचना चाहिए, अवाम तो चाहते हैं, अवाम की ख्वाहिश है कि वो अमन से रहें, चाहे वो दोनों पाकिस्तान है, कश्मीर है, अमन चाहते हैं, और इसलिए भी अमन चाहते हैं। और मैं ये समझता हूँ कि जैसे कि अब्दुल्ला साहब ने कहा कि हम बिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स खर्च कर चुके हैं बारूद पे, तो मैं एग्री करता हूँ कि हमने बिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर बारूद पे खर्च किए हैं। वही डॉलर अगर अवाम की बहबूद पे खर्च होते तो आज हम कहाँ के कहाँ होते, हम वेस्ट से भी आगे होते, अमेरिका से भी आगे होते, तमाम ममालिक से आगे होते। लेकिन हम किसी को ब्लेम नहीं करेंगे, ये हमारी अपनी गलती है कि हमने बहबूद के बजाय बारूद को तरजीह दी। तो मेरी गुजारिश है तमाम इन लोगों से कि हिस्ट्री में जो वाकयात गुजरे हैं, जो तलखियां गुजरी हैं, मत दोहराएं उनको, डाइवर्जेंस मत करें, कन्वर्जेंस की तरफ आएं। और जब हम कन्वर्जेंस की तरफ आएंगे तो ही कोई हल हम निकाल सकेंगे कि हम एक हो के बैठें। एंड मैं ज्यादा लंबी बात नहीं करूंगा, मैं 100% एग्री विद अनीस हारून, और जो अब्दुल्ला साहब ने अभी कहा है कि वी शुड सॉफन द बॉर्डर्स हमें सॉफन करने चाहिए, लोगों को आने जाने की आज़ादी होनी चाहिए, सब आए जाएं, एक दूसरे से मिलें, और खुदा के वास्ते इन नफरतों को ख़त्म करें, मोहब्बत को पैदा करें। एंड लेट्स नॉट get stuck up in history, let's create history. अगर हम वही हिस्टोरिकल जो नफरतें हैं उनमें उलझे रहेंगे तो हम कुछ नहीं कर पाएंगे। Let's not live in history, let's create history. तो और आप जो कर रहे हैं शाह साहब, आपको सलाम है, आप you are doing it for decades, you are doing a tremendous job। और मैं चाहता हूं कि आपकी जिंदगी में, हमारी जिंदगी में हम ये देखें कि हम पहले की तरह 47 से पहले की तरह एक दूसरे के इलाकों में आ रहे हैं, जा रहे हैं, मेल जोल बढ़ रहा है। शायद अगर हम ऐसा देख सकें तो हम समझेंगे कि हम बड़े खुश नसीब हैं। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
डॉक्टर सुनीलम, सोशल एक्टिविस्ट इन इंडिया, प्लीज।
जी, सभी को नमस्कार, आदाब। मैं डॉक्टर फारूक अब्दुल्ला जी ने मुझे लगता है कि पूरे जो देश की जो आवाज़ है और जो समझ है वो सबके साथ में साझा कर दी है। मैं ओपी शाह साहब का जो इनिशिएटिव है उसके अंदर जो कुछ भी सुनने के लिए मिला, हम लोगों का ये प्रयास बांग्लादेश भारत पाकिस्तान पीपल्स फोरम की तरफ से हम लोगों का ये प्रयास बराबर रहा है, और डॉक्टर फारूक अब्दुल्ला साहब भी उसके अंदर जो है एक मददगार के तौर पर उसके कॉन्फ्रेंसेस में आते रहे हैं, और डॉक्टर ओपी शाह जी तो इस समय जो है उसके वाइस प्रेसिडेंट के तौर पर हम लोगों के बीच में हैं। मैं इतना ही कहना चाहता हूं कि हम लोग तो वर्ल्ड विदाउट बॉर्डर्स चाहने वाले लोग हैं, विश्व नागरिकता वाले लोग हैं, लेकिन जो है वो एक आदर्शवाद से तो काम चलता नहीं है। जो नफरत है वही खत्म होना जरूरी है। और वो नफरत केवल भारत पाकिस्तान के बीच में नहीं है। हमारे यहाँ पर जो लोग सियासत कर रहे हैं, जो लोग दिल्ली के अंदर बैठे हैं, वो लोग केवल भारत पाकिस्तान और हिंदू मुसलमान करके ही वो लोग सत्ता के ऊपर वो हैं। और इसलिए मुझे ऐसा लगता है, मैं केवल इतना कहना चाहता हूं, हम लोग मैं एक यूरोप के अंदर एक मैं मीटिंग के अंदर गया था, और उस मीटिंग के अंदर WTO का हम लोग विरोध कर रहे थे एग्रीकल्चर एग्रीमेंट को लेकर के। और तो जब उसके सेक्रेटरी जनरल थे, उन्होंने कहा कि हमारा विरोध करने की जगह आप अपने शासकों को दुरुस्त करने का काम करो। तो मेरा कहना यह है कि हम लोगों को, जो हमारे हुक्मरान हैं, उनको ठीक करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि अगर लोकतंत्र रहेगा और लोकतंत्र अगर प्रॉपरली काम करेगा तो जो लोगों का विल है, यहाँ पर जो पॉलिटिकल विल की बात हुई है, मैं उससे 110% सहमत हूं कि बिना पॉलिटिकल विल के नहीं होगा। लेकिन अगर पॉलिटिकल विल के लोग अगर दिल्ली के अंदर या इस्लामाबाद के अंदर जो है अगर वो सत्ताधीश नहीं है, तो ये काम क्या हम लोग छोड़ देंगे? नहीं छोड़ेंगे। ओपी शाह साहब तो ये बताया जैसे कि वो डिकेट्स के साथ में काम कर रहे हैं, तो हम अपना प्रयास जनता के बीच में रखेंगे। मुझे लगता है कि पीस मूवमेंट को हमें ज्यादा ताकत देने की जरूरत है। हमें डिसआर्मामेंट का जो मूवमेंट है, निरस्तीकरण का जो मूवमेंट है, उसको हमें ज्यादा ताकत देने की जरूरत है, और इस डायलॉग को जो है लगातार बढ़ाने की जरूरत है। तो मैं तो ये कहूंगा ओपी शाह साहब से कि आप ऐसे डायलॉग्स और करिए। हम लोग कोशिश करते हैं BPPF से, लेकिन पाकिस्तान के लोगों को वीजा जो है भारत सरकार नहीं देती है, तो इसलिए मामला पूरी तरीके से फंस जाता है। लेकिन इसके बावजूद भी मुझे लगता है कि इसी तरीके से जूम के माध्यम से ही हम एक रेगुलर मीटिंग्स का अगर हम दौर करें, और इसमें लगातार हम जो इस देश के ऐसे चुनिंदा लोग हैं जो अमन चाहते हैं और सद्भावना चाहते हैं नफरत की जगह पर, ऐसे लोगों को हम, अगर जो इंटेलेक्चुअल्स हैं, जो ओपिनियन मेकर्स हैं दोनों मुल्कों के अंदर, अगर हम उन्हें जोड़ते चले जाएं, तो मुझे लगता है कि ये काफिला बढ़ता चला जाएगा, और इंशाल्लाह हम लोगों का जो एक सपना है वो जरूर पूरा होगा, कि जो है हम लोग सीधे बाघा बॉर्डर क्रॉस करके और लाहौर के अंदर आ जा सकेंगे एक ही दिन के अंदर। फिलहाल तो ये काम अगर डॉक्टर्स के लिए हो जाए, अगर ये काम सांस्कृतिक कर्मियों के लिए हो जाए, तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि हम लोगों को उसके लिए अपने अपनी सरकारों को एक दबाव बनाने का काम करना चाहिए, जिसकी जरूरत है दोनों मुल्कों को, जिनकी जरूरत है। अच्छे जो फिल्मकार हैं, अच्छे जो म्यूजिशियन हैं, अच्छे जो खिलाड़ी हैं, जो अच्छे डॉक्टर्स हैं, इनकी जरूरत है। और मुझे लगता है कि ये जो है एक मैसेंजर ऑफ पीस के तौर पर ये काम कर सकते हैं। बस मैं इतनी कहना चाहता हूं, और मुझे पूरा सबसे इससे पूरी प्रोसेस से जुड़ के बहुत अच्छा लगा, और मैं चाहूंगा कि इस तरीके की जो प्रक्रिया है ओपी शाह साहब और इनिशिएटिव लेकर के, आपने अभी तक हिम्मत नहीं हारी है, तो आप जरूर कामयाब होंगे अपने जीवन काल में, जैसे डॉक्टर फारूक अब्दुल्ला साहब चाहते हैं। शुक्रिया।
Thank you very much. Any other friend before I invite Dulat Saab and Mushahid Hussain Saab to offer their final comments? Is there any other friend who would like to speak for a minute or two?
ओपी साहब जी, थैंक यू वेरी मच। आप इतने अच्छे इनिशिएटिव ले लिया है, जो हम वही चाहते हैं। अभी अभी डॉक्टर सुनीलम ने बोला, आपको और सबको बोला है, जो हम जो चाहते हैं आप वही कोशिश कर रहे हैं। हम चाहते हैं अब तीनों मुल्क एक हो जाए, सिर्फ पाकिस्तान और इंडिया नहीं, उसके साथ बांग्लादेश भी है। हम अभी तो 3 मुल्क हो गया, पहले तो 2 था, 2 से 3 हो गया, तो अब ये 3 मुल्क एक हो जाए और उसके अंदर दस्ती अच्छे संपर्क बन जाए, तो सबसे अच्छे सबके लिए ही होगा। और मेरे ख्याल से फारूक साहब ने जो बोला है, जो एक सेकेंड, फारूक साहब ने जो बोला है, अभी 3 देशों के अंदर उनको जीवित अवस्था में देखना चाहते हैं, तो हम लोग लगता है अगर हम कोशिश करेंगे, ऐसे जारी रखेंगे हमारा कोशिश, आप जैसे कर रहे हैं, हम लोग जैसे कर रहे हैं, बांग्लादेश भारत पाकिस्तान पीपल्स फोरम, जैसे डॉक्टर सुनीलम ने बोला, जो हम लोग कोशिश करेंगे तीनों देशों के अंदर, पीपल्स के अंदर, लोगों के अंदर अच्छे संपर्क बन जाए, तो लोगों के अंदर अच्छे संपर्क बन जाए, तो ऊपर से वो लोग भी अच्छे संपर्क बनाने का कोशिश करेगा मेरे ख्याल से। तो हम ऐसे कोशिश करते जाएंगे, जारी रखेंगे, और आप भी करते जाइए। मेरे ख्याल से एक दिन न एक दिन हमारा सबका सपना पूरा होगा, और हम सब लोग फिर एक हो जाएंगे और एक साथ मिलके जुलके, और जैसे हमारा कोई रिश्तेदार और दोस्त दूसरा देश में है, जैसे पाकिस्तान बांग्लादेश में है, वैसे पाकिस्तान और बांग्लादेश का भी कुछ लोग उसका रिलेटिव्स वगैरह इधर है। तो ऐसे नहीं होगा कि हम हमारा रिलेटिव्स के पास जाना चाहते तो हमारा वीजा नहीं मिलेगा और वो बर्डन में मुझे रोक देगा, ऐसे नहीं होना चाहिए। कम से कम हम उधर हमारा दोस्ती के साथ दौड़, हमारा रिलेटिव्स के साथ मिलने के जाने का कोई परमिशन मिले, ऐसा वीजा का कुछ रिलैक्सेशन हो जाएगा, या जितना जल्दी हो जाएगा उतना ही अच्छा है। और सुनीलम ने जो बोला है, जे कम से कम डॉक्टर्स और संस्कृत जगत का लोगों का जब होता है, जो कल्चरल एक्सचेंजेस होगा, डॉक्टर्स का होगा, खिलाड़ियों को होगा, ये सब जल्दी, जितना जल्दी हो जाए उतना ही अच्छा होगा मेरे ख्याल से। तो आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, आप ऐसे करते जाइए और हम भी कोशिश करेंगे। थैंक यू वेरी मच। बस मैं आप ही खत्म।
क्या साहब, मैं
बोलिए पंचोली साहब प्लीज।
नहीं, मैं थोड़ा सा ये जो मैडम मनीष ने जो बात कही कि जो अपनी बेटी के साथ आई थी और उनको कुछ ऐसा लगा, तो जो परस्पर एक दूसरे का आवाजाही है वो बहुत ज़रूरी है। बहुत सारी ऐसी मिस गिविंग्स हैं, मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन है, जब तक आपस में लोग आएंगे नहीं, मिलेंगे नहीं, दूर नहीं। मुझे एक इंस्टेंस याद आता है कि लाहौर के स्टूडेंट्स थे आर्किटेक्चर के, अबाउट 21 ईयर के थे वो लड़के और लड़कियां। वो आए यहाँ देखने के लिए, चंडीगढ़ देखना चाहते थे, रॉक गार्डन देखा उन्होंने, मैं उनके साथ था। तो उनके क्रिएटर से मिले टेकचंद से। तो 1 घंटे बातचीत के बाद उन्होंने, एक लड़की ने कहा चलते वक्त कि अंकल एक मैसेज लिख दीजिए, डायरी उनको बढ़ाई। तो उन्होंने, टेकचंद ने डायरी लेकर के मैसेज लिखा। उन्होंने जो डायरी को देखा तो शी वाज सरप्राइज, क्योंकि वो उर्दू में लिखा हुआ था। तो वो एकदम से अचंभे से बोली कि अंकल आपको उर्दू आती है? तो वो बोले भाई मैं तो अखबार ही उर्दू का पढ़ता हूँ। उन्होंने टेबल से निकाला और अखबार निकाल दिया उर्दू का, हिंद समाचार। तो वो, दैट वाज अनदर सरप्राइज। बोले जी यहाँ उर्दू में भी अखबार निकलता है? उसने कहा हाँ, मैं तो रोज यही पढ़ता हूँ। तो मतलब इस तरह की एक तरीके से जो मिसगिविंग्स हैं लोगों के आपस में, एक दूसरे जो प्रोपेगंडा वहाँ ये होता है वहाँ, जब तक हम आपस में मिलेंगे नहीं, मेल जोल नहीं होगा, तो ये खुलना चाहिए, आवाजाही खुलनी चाहिए। बस मेरा इतना कहना था।
थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Agreed.
Anybody else? Dulat साहब, would you, your final comments? आपकी आवाज नहीं सुनाई दे रही है। Can't hear. हाँ बोलिए।
You have to unmute Dulat sahab.
You have to unmute him because he is muted from your side. Shah Sahab, he is muted from your side.
दुलत साहब का कर दीजिए। Yeah, I think it's.
He is muted from your side.
Okay, let's check. दुलत साहब अब बोलिए।
No, he is still muted. Sir, you have to unmute yourself, Dulat sahab. You have to unmute yourself now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. We can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, yes. I just had a couple of points to react to. अभी बातें हो रही थी तो मैं मानता हूं कि ये जो है दिल की दूरी और दिल्ली और इस्लामाबाद की दूरी ये खत्म होनी चाहिए। एंड हम तो उस हमने इसमें बड़ी कोशिशें की है। आपको मालूम है कि जनरल दुरानी और मैं मिलके एक किताब भी लिखी थी, which is unique and it's not likely to be repeated in a hurry. He got into serious trouble and I had my fair share of brickbats. So these things we keep trying, and we continue to keep trying. On the question of Kashmir, which is debated in great detail, I have only one point. Mujahid Saab also mentioned, I think, the 4-point formula. I think we were all in agreement with that 4-point formula. And that brings us to, there is only one inevitable solution, which I have heard Dr. Saab mentioning for the last 30 plus years, that we need to settle on the line of control. What is yours, and what is ours is ours. We can't take that away, and you can't take this away, you know. And then there is this question of coming and going, you know. So if the Kartarpur Sahib corridor could be open, why can we not open Jammu and Sialkot and make coming and going so much easier between the two countries? And the visa regime needs to be softened. And I think we need to move forward in every which way. I think, you know, we are going to be having, I think Mushahir Hussain Saab referred to cricket. We are going to have the IPL soon in India. And when the IPL first started, Pakistani players came and they were the most sought after. I don't know why they should not play again, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much, Shah Saab. Thank you.
Could I now request Mushahid Saab to offer his final comments, or anyone else has a question or some suggestion to offer to him? Mushahid Saab.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Shah Saab. I think it's been a very...
We would like to hear you in detail and the questions which have come before you, please. No time limit.
No, thank you very much, sir. It's a pleasure. And I first again compliment you for your vision. And you have shown the will to take your vision forward. And that political will may be lacking among certain politicians, but I think you have shown that we can take the bull by the horns and bring people on the same platform for the common goal of promoting peace, security, and stability in our part of the world. Just a couple of comments. Number one, I think that one takeaway is very clear from today's discussion, that, as I mentioned, Kashmir remains paramount, and there is a general agreement that it is paramount. And also, as a corollary to this factor is the element that the status quo in Kashmir cannot be tenable. And to say that it's a closed chapter, I think that won't do, because that's not acceptable to people inside Indian occupied Kashmir. It's not acceptable to public opinion here. So I think that is one area which is extremely important. Secondly, I would agree with Dullah Saab that the back channel factor. And the back channel has always been there. It was there in the time of Mr. Nawaz Sharif, Mr. Mishra and Niaz Naik Saab. It was there in the time of General Musharraf. There was Mr. Lamba and there was Mr. Tariq Aziz. They were there also. And yeah, I remember the famous meeting with Mr. Gujral, with Mr. Nawaz Sharif had in '97, and I was information minister. We had in Maldives where we discussed things, and I was talking to Gujral Sahab because he was a dear friend also. Things had been more or less agreed upon, but then situation changed inside India. There's a new element which has come in, and I think I want to bring that to the fore. And that is the feeling in Pakistan that perhaps there is either confusion on the side of the Indian establishment, or there is the fact that India's Pakistan policy seems increasingly driven by domestic Indian political considerations of the ruling party. And for that, they need to keep things on a certain boil for domestic political reasons. And I think there is a new element which was not there before, but this is increasingly there. और आपने देखा डॉक्टर फारूक अब्दुल्ला साहब ने जिक्र भी किया कि नफरतें बढ़ रही हैं, and we see that the temperature being raised. And I again reiterate about this element of lack of a constituency in Pakistan which seeks this kind of confrontation. I tell you, recently we had a good briefing in GHQ as with the army generals and army military high command on national security post Afghanistan. and as chairman of the Defense Committee. And when General Bajwa gave his formulation on relations with India, I said, General Saab, ye to bada acha hai. That means your views about India and your perspective on Pakistan-India relations is the same as that of Mr. Nawaz. And he said, yes, that is true. I feel that we should have this kind of thing. So I think, and I know that our Prime Minister also, at least he claims that he knows India so well that he's been to India, I think 30, 40 times, mostly as a cricketer, but there's this feeling that he can deal with India. So I think this element is again a very important element. Regarding the ceasefire of 25th February 2021, very important decision. Let me tell you, the initiative came from the Indian side. They approached us during the back channel. I think it was Mr. Doval from their side, and I think the DGISI at that time, General Faz from our side, when they were having those things. And the Indian side suggested lowering of the temperature. Our view was very clear that perhaps because India also wants to avoid a two-front situation. China factor aa gaya tha. There were clashes in Galwan. And then also the coronavirus crisis, the Indian economy was hit. So I think they wanted to close certain fronts. And we were given to understand during the back channel between the two sides, the two interlocutors, that India would be willing to discuss any and every issue, including Kashmir, with Pakistan. And we accept our readiness. So there was this political will from our side to move forward. I think that as Shyam Saran Saab writes in his book, How India Views the World, where he said that agreement was almost arrived at on Siachen and Sir Creek, but then Mr. Narayanan, the National Security Advisor, and I think General J.J. Singh, the Indian Army Chief, they scuttled it. So we have walks on all sides also, and sometimes the hawkish element prevails. But I would again reiterate from the Pakistani side, there is a very strong perspective and a political will that we need to move forward in relation with India. And that's why I would tell our Indian friends, this is an opportunity. But this impediment should be taken notice of, that what we feel, that perhaps in Mr. Modi's calculations or the ruling party's calculations, domestic Indian politics, Hindutva politics, is driving the Pakistan policy also in order to garner votes. India bashing no longer sells in Pakistan, as I mentioned, but it seems Pakistan bashing does sell, and it can be politically lucrative for that hawkish constituency. And I think that new impediment should be taken note of. And I think the Indian establishment also needs to be very clear that it's about the region. For the first time, this region is free of major power influences in 40 years. 79, it was the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, then there was Civil War, then the Americans. And now after the American defeat, we are dealing with China, Russia, Pakistan, Central Asian republics, India is there, Iran. I think the regional countries should take charge of their destinies and not be part of any new Cold War. And also it's important that from the Indian side, and I would say the ball is in the Indian court now, that to move forward on relations with Pakistan, the opportunity is there. And I think, Mr. Opisha, we should also take some other initiatives at a non-governmental people-to-people level. Perhaps an in-person meeting in Islamabad or Delhi. The book project is a good one. Dulat Saab ne cricket ki baat ki hai. We were ready for cricket also, but then it was scuttled from their side. Abhi dekhen, agreement hua tha for Pakistani pilgrims to go to this Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti ka, Ajmer Sharif ka. Last minute, it was then scuttled from the Indian side. So even the low-hanging fruit, we see there's some hidden hand which doesn't want to move forward. So I think the opportunity is there. We should seize it, but it takes two to tango, and the political will seems to, or confusion may be there in New Delhi. This seems to be lacking there. From our side, whether it's the people in Khaki or in Mufti, by Mufti I mean the civilian side, and the political forces, whether in government or opposition, I would say that we are ready to move forward on relations with India. There's a new opportunity, a new opening after the recent developments in the region. And I think Pakistan and India should take charge of it rather than inviting outside powers to meddle in the region or to create a new kind of a Cold War policy, which it is going to be counterproductive and which we in Pakistan at least reject, because it's a tried, tested and failed formula from the American military industrial complex, which now wants new enemies in Russia and China, and to use Quad or AUKUS or NATO for that. And that is something the Asian century of 21st century will not find acceptable at all. Thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure. And I look forward to meeting some of you in person, either in Islamabad or in New Delhi, and also seeing you virtually as and when the opportunity arises. And I thank Mr. Opisha for taking this initiative forward. We need that Nixonian vision. Nixon had that vision to take the initiative forward in China. And I think the only other statesman in South Asia who had who I respect very much, who had the Nixonian vision, was Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. And Vajpayee Sahib, when he came to Pakistan, I had the honor and privilege of being his minister in waiting for 4 days. And I know that he was a great, far-sighted statesman. I think that's what is needed. Somebody who can rise beyond that partisan politics to build a better tomorrow for South Asia. Thank you so much.
Just speak for a minute or two on 4-point formula that Sahib referred.
4-point formula was General Musharraf's formula, and it was being discussed. And then it was being fine-tuned. I remember Mr. Lamba when he used to come, because Lamba Sahib was an old friend of mine. He had served here as deputy to Dr. Singh Sahib. Then he was from, I think his family was from Peshawar also. He knew the region very well. And then he was High Commissioner himself, and then Germany, ambassador in Germany. So whenever he used to come on these secret visits, I used to meet him. He used to stay not in a hotel, but in Punjab House. So we used to have discussions over dinner also, along with Mr. Tariq Aziz. And a lot of work was being done. But unfortunately, when Mr. Musharraf had to resign and leave office, there was no ownership of that formula by the government that followed him, which was Mr. Zardari and People's Party government. And I think then the military establishment of that period also, I think, disowned that. So I think that Mr. Musharraf, he took a major risk. But I was there at a meeting with Mr. Musharraf and Manmohan Singh Sahib. It was in September 2005 in New York. I was there with him and Kashuri Sahib, the foreign minister. And from the Indian side, it was Mr. Narayanan Natwar Singh. And Manmohan Singh Sahib, I felt, was being held back by his two minders. And we said, please announce a visit to Pakistan. We'll take you to your village Gah, which is in Chakwal in Punjab, and let's have some gestures. At that time, our side, the political will was there. Musharraf was all in all. He was a military leader. He was army chief. He had the backing of the system, and he was willing to take it. And this is the first time in the history of Pakistan, a Pakistani government leader had gone back on Pakistan's consistent position on Kashmir, which is that it should be resolved according to UN resolutions. And he said, let's have the 4-point formula, and it was. So then I think that opportunity was squandered. But I would blame the Indian side for that. And Mr. Manmohan Singh perhaps was not fully in control. And the hawks in the Indian system, Mr. Narayanan, or at that time even Natwar Singh, they wouldn't let him take that next step forward. So that was that. But then new formulas can be worked out, or they can be brought out from the drawing board also. But some sort of work in progress has to be there, a settlement. Otherwise, this problem cannot be brushed inside the carpet. And as I said, I agree with Anis Harun Saib also. It's a humanitarian issue also, humanity. I remember I was in Delhi and Mr. Rasgotra was the head of the Observer Research Foundation. He said, why are you interested in Kashmir? I said, we're not interested in Kashmir. We're interested in the Kashmiri people. It's about people. It's not about real estate. It's about humanity. So I think it's important that the suffering of the Kashmiri people must come to an end. We have seen what has been happening, especially after the 5th August 2019 annexation of occupied Kashmir, which has been rejected by the Kashmiri people and also by international public opinion because it's contrary to international law. So I think that we have to break the log jam, and somebody has to take the bull by the horns on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Million thanks to Mushahid Hussain Saab and all the Pakistani friends. And I'm sure, you want to say a word? Our friend from Karachi wants to say a word, please. आपकी आवाज नहीं सुनाई दे रही है.
म्यूट किया होगा आपने.
हाँ. Yes, please.
Please unmute yourself.
Getting me?
Yes,
Hello?
we hear you now.
If you are getting me?
Yes.
बोलिए. नहीं, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
नहीं आ रही तो.
All right. Friends, thank you very much for participating in discussion. Hope that we will have such sessions and real meetings will also take place, not only virtual, but real meetings between the Indian and Pakistanis, both in India as well as in Pakistan. Thank you very much once again for participating in this meaningful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shah Saab. Thank you.
Adab.
Adab, adab.
Thank you. Thank you.
जी शाह साहब. शाह साहब मीटिंग तो ओवर हो गई है, बट कुड यू हियर मी?